All right, math students, open up to the last page in your decimal operations booklet. It should be the bottom tab labeled dividing decimals. And the reason why I kind of held off on this page is because it mainly talks about dividing decimals by a decimal, which is our lesson today. So I wanted to fill this out kind of as a refresher of how to divide decimals, but then also to kind of keep it fresh in our mind with dividing decimals by a decimals. Or by a decimal. So the first step when we divide decimals is we're going to write the problem with the first number, just like we talked about yesterday. First number inside the division bracket, just like when we do our little X underneath the two numbers, like I talked about yesterday. So we're going to write the first number, or write the problem with the first number inside a division bracket. We're going to rewrite the divisor as a whole number, which is the one outside. I'm going to put outside on top. And move the decimal in the dividend as needed, which is the inside. Okay, so that may not make a whole lot of sense to you right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause these notes. I'm going to solve this problem down here, and we're going to set it up just until we get to this part in our directions, and then we will be able to continue on with the notes. So remember, I told you this little X here, 10.35 is going to go on the inside of the bracket, 2.3 is going to go on the outside of the bracket. So let's set this up, 2.3 goes into 10.35. Now yesterday I told you right when you are done, you need to, or right before you start solving the problem, put your decimal point up right away so you don't forget. Today, you actually have to do something first before you can put your decimal point straight up on top for your quotient. Now, what it says here, rewrite the divisor as a whole number. So the number on the outside. And you'll notice that this is a decimal. It's not a whole number, and we need to make it a whole number. So in order to do that, we need to move this decimal point as many times as we need to in order to make it a whole number. Just so that this decimal point is as close or right next to the bracket, the start of the bracket here. In this case, we only have to move it once. So now when we move it once, it becomes 23. Now you're probably thinking, okay, 2.3 can go into 10.35, and that's one problem. But why are we changing it to be 23 going into 10.35? Because that's going to be a whole different answer, a whole different problem. And you're right. However many times you need to move it on the outside, you need to move it the same amount of times on the inside. So now we're going to move this to here. So we're still going to get the same answer as we would here. We just multiplied each number by 10 to make it easier on ourselves. Because now we have a whole number and a decimal on the inside, which is exactly what we worked on all day yesterday. So 2.3 now becomes 23. 10.35 now becomes 103.5. Okay, that's what we've gotten to so far. Once you have this decimal point with your dividend moved as many places as it needs to go in order to match the number of places you moved it in the outside, you can put your decimal point straight up on top of the bracket for your quotient. Okay, now the next step says divide without worrying about the decimal yet. We're going to add zeros until there's no remainder or you notice repetition. Okay, so now we're going to start dividing. So now we know, okay, 23, that can't go into 1. I'm going to put a 0 there. But I'm not going to spend time 0 times 23, subtract, and then do the next one because I know the next one's a 0 also. But I am going to put the zeros there to hold my spot. Worst case scenario, put the zeros in front, and we can always get rid of them at the end. But I would rather put them in there to be safe and then be able to get rid of them than not have them in there and go, wait a second, my answer does not make sense. Okay, so 23 can't go into 1, we put our 0. 23 can't go into 10, we put our 0. But now 23 can actually go into 103, probably about 4 times. Let's see what 23, I gotta do that art like Khan Academy said. 4 times 3 is 12, 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. Okay, that's about all I can do. So 4 goes here. 4 times 23 is 92. When I subtract, I get 1 and 11, because that becomes 0. 10 minus 9 is 1. We end up with 11. Okay. Now we have one more digit here. We're going to bring it down. So that 115 is now, we're trying to see how many times 23 can go into. Well, let's look here. I'm going to try adding another 23, because I know this is 4 plus 23, which is 1. 2 plus 3 is 5. 9 plus 2 is 11. It's exactly 115. So now that I knew that 92 was 4 groups of 23, and I added one more group of 23, this is now a 5. 5 times 23 is 115. When I subtract, I get 0. This is one step to notice you're done with your problem if you have a 0 down here. And I also don't have any more digits over here, so I am done. Okay, so we added zeros if we needed to, but we didn't actually need to in this case. Now, this one says place the decimal point in the answer above with the decimal in the dividend, but we actually already did this step. I would really, really highly recommend you to do it right away so you don't forget. Okay, now notice, we added our zeros in here. We actually don't need them there. Now that we realize our answer is 4.5, I would never write 4.5 as 004.5. But I'm glad I put them there just to be safe. Okay, so I can ignore them, and my answer is 4.5. Okay? All right, now that you have these examples here, I'm going to have you open up to your math textbook, page 240, and we're going to solve a few practice problems in here so we have them as examples in our book if you ever need to look back to figure out how to solve these problems. Okay, so let's look at the bottom here. We're going to solve this problem up here, but I'm going to actually show the work over here. So A is 54.4 divided by 1.7. Notice I'm going to put my X here. So my 1.7 is going to go on the outside, and my 54.4 is going to go on the inside. Okay, so now I need to stop and look. I have a decimal out here and a decimal in here. Biggest concern, you want to see if you have a decimal outside or not. Okay, we need to move this decimal point as many times, or multiply it by 10 as many times as we need to make it a whole number. Again, it's only one spot. So we need to move this decimal point the same number of times that we moved the one on the outside. So now our new problem is 17 going into 544. Now if you need to rewrite this, if these little arrows and the moving of the decimal is kind of a lot going on in your problem, feel free to rewrite it after this. Or maybe down below here, set up your problem and then rewrite it to somewhere else so that you can start showing your work. Okay, so now I might actually rewrite it just so you can see the difference of it here. So I'll write it above. 17 goes into 544. Okay, I'm going to put my decimal point straight up in my problem so that when I am ready and my answer is starting to come alive up here, I know exactly where my decimal point goes and I don't forget to add it in. All right, 17 can't go into 5. Again, I'm going to add my zeros just to kind of save my spot, and so I know exactly my place value, but we can always get rid of them at the end. Okay, so now I could do 0 times 17 is 0. I could subtract and get 54, but now I can just, instead of doing that work, let's just look. 17 can go into 54. I know. Well, I know 17 plus 17 is 34. Can we get another? Well, I know the difference between 34 and 54 is 20. So I know I can get another 17 in there and get 51. So let's do 3. 3 times 17 is 51. When I subtract, I get 3 left over. I bring down my 4. 17 goes into 34 twice. 2 times 17 is 34. 0, and look at, we're done. We used all of our digits up here, and I get 0 down here. I don't have to add another 0 because that fit evenly. So actually, my answer is a whole number. I don't even need to really worry about my decimal point in that case. So you could write 32 as your answer. You could also rewrite it as 32.0 if you wanted to. But that's that problem. Okay, now this one, let's do letter B. Letter B, I'm going to put in my X, and I'm going to rewrite it down here, and then maybe I'll solve it up here for you. So I know 0.36 goes into 8.424. All All right, so this one's going to be a little different. I notice that I'm not just going to be able to move my decimal point one place on the outside in order to get it right next to the bracket or to make a whole number. I actually have to move it twice. So I'm going to move it once, twice, twice. So now my new problem becomes 36 into 842.4. Move my decimal point straight up in my quotient, and now I can solve. Zoom in a little for you guys so you can see it a little better. Okay, 36 can't go into 8. I know that. 36 can go into 84 twice, because I know 36 plus 36 is 72. 2 times 36 is 72, and when I subtract it, I get 12. Then I'm going to bring my 2 down. 36 into 122. Well, I know that 2 groups of it is 72. Let's add one more. Let's just try one more and see what that gets us. So 72 plus 36 is 108. Now I know I can't add another group of 36 to this without going over this. So I'm going to stick with 3 groups of this. 3 times 36 is 108. 2 minus 8, can't do. 12 minus 8 is 4. 1 minus 0 is 1. So I have 14 left over. Now, bring down the last digit that's up there. Let's add another 36 to this. I'm kind of writing in the words here, so sorry. I apologize. It's kind of hard to read. 108 plus 36. 8 plus 6 is 14. 10 plus 3 is 13. 11 plus 0. Oh, wait a second. I'm not doing that right. Let's go back. 108 plus 36. 8 plus 6 is 14. Here we go. 1 plus 0 plus 3 is 4. 1 plus 0 is 1. We end up getting 130 or 144. Now, notice how I made this mistake over here. As I was adding, I somehow thought this was a 10 and not, I had borrowing and subtracting in my mind. But the reason why I noticed it was wrong is because I saw my answer as 234. Now, that did not make sense to me. Big red flag was drawn. Because I know this is pretty close to 100 and this is pretty close to 40. So my answer should be around 140 or 150 if you rounded this to 110. But if I got 234 as my answer, I went, wait a second, what did I do wrong? Well, then I found it, I found my mistake, and I fixed it over here. Okay, so now 36 can go in 144, 2, 3, 4 times. 4 times 36 is 144. When I subtract, I get 0, and I'm out of digits up here. So my answer, we can ignore that 0, would be 23.4. Okay, so the biggest thing you have to remember, it's easy. You've had a lot of practice with this. Once you figure out how many times you need to move the decimal point in the outside number in order to make it a whole number, and then the same amount of times in the inside number to keep up with that place value. That's your biggest thing to remember with this. Let's look over the next page, page 241. We have a couple more problems we're going to work on. Now these here have zeros that we may need to actually keep this time. So let's try out a couple. In my x, I'm going to write 0.014 on the outside, and I'm going to just kind of solve it down here, and then I'll solve it up here eventually after I move my decimal point. So I have 0.014 divided by 5.6. 1, 2, 3 spots is what I need to move this one. But now you're probably going, wait a second. There's only 2 digits here. 1, 2, 3, decimal point, decimal point. If you run out of digits, you still need to move it, but you would just add zeros in those spots. Then you move your decimal point straight up and you would start solving. Now when I'm rewriting it over here, my new problem ends up becoming 14 into 5600. We're going to get the same answer as we would as 0.014 going into 5.6. We just made it easier on ourselves to solve. We just multiplied each one by 1,000 in this case, 3 spots would be 3 times 10 in order to solve it. Okay, now let's put our decimal point up here and we can start solving. So we have 14 can't go into 5, and I'm still going to add in my 0. I can always get rid of it later, but let's just add it in to save our spot. Okay, 14 can go into 56. Well, I know 14 plus 14 is 28, and that's 2 groups. But I also know that 28 plus 28 is 56 exactly, and that's another 2 groups. So that means 14 can go into 56 4 times exactly. When we subtract, we get 0. Now you're probably thinking, all right, these are zeros up here. This is a 0 down here. I'm done. But look at how many spots we still need to fill before our decimal point. So that means we need to keep adding our zeros and bringing them down. 14 can't go into 0. 0 times 14 is 0. When we subtract, we get 0. We're going to have to bring this one down again. We get 0. 14 can't go into 0. We get 0. Okay, now we are out of decimals over here, or digits over here. We have a 0 down below, and we have our answer up here, our quotient. I'm going to get rid of that 0, and I'm going to rewrite my answer over here to be 400. Okay, let's try another one. Let's try letter E. Letter E, 206.24. Wait a second. That's a whole number. We actually don't need to move this. So I'm going to start solving it right up here. 200 goes into 6.24. This is a whole number divided by a decimal, so we can just start dividing right away. Put our decimal point up here. Now I notice 200 definitely can't go into 6. So we are actually going to solve this out, unlike skipping like we did before. 0 times 200 is 0. When we subtract, we get 6. Bring down our 2. Still can't go into 62. So when we subtract, we get 62. Bring down a 4. 4. Now it can go into 624 3 times. 3 times 200 is 600. 600. I get 24 left over. But I'm out of digits up here. So that means I need to add another 0, continue down, and add it down here. 200 can go into 240 1 time. We subtract, we get 200. Ooh, we're left with 40. I have a good feeling about this. Add another 0, because I still don't have 0 down here. I'm going to bring that all the way down. So now I have 400. And notice 200 can go into 400 evenly. 2 times. We get 400. When we subtract, we get 0. And we're done. We have our answer. We're out of digits up here because we had to keep adding zeros. 0.0312 is my answer for letter E. Okay? Now, if you would like to practice a few more, and if you would like me to check over them, feel free to do some of the problems in the independent practice on the next page, or even the extra practice on the next page. Or if you go back to 242, these guided practice problems are always pretty good practice problems if you need them. If you are wanting to do more practice and if you ever want to have me check over them and you're at home, you can just take a picture of them with your Chromebook, send them to me in an email. Just say, hey, Mrs. Hurst, I wanted some extra practice and I solved these. Can you just double check them for me to see if I got them right, if I'm doing things right? Go right ahead and do that. Otherwise, your homework for this is going to be in your packet, the dividing decimals packet. And it is the 3rd page in this packet that we have. It's called Divide Decimals by Decimals. There's no page number at the bottom, so you'll just have to find the correct title in your packet. Now, again, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are each going to be worth 2 points. Same as the page before. 1 point for showing your work and 1 point for the answer. So this whole section up here is worth 8 points. And then we have 2 problems down below. I'm going to have you save these 2 word problems. Right now, I just want you to do problems number 1 through 4 in that page. We're going to spend 2 days working on divide decimals by decimals, and we will do problems 5 and 6 down at the bottom tomorrow. So this right here, these 2, are going to be homework for Monday. So if you want to write this on your page, go right ahead. And then these down here are going to be Tuesday. Okay, so you don't have to worry about number 5 and 6 for today. Just do page or problems 1 through 4 on the top, just so you can get the practice and the repetition and the process down. Let me know if you have any other questions. Feel free to email me, and you're all set.